What does it mean to be smart? Is it your IQ, your EQ, number of advanced degrees? Beyond all these though, there are many examples of incredibly smart people out there. Thinkers, teachers, journalists, academics, business people. There is no one single manifestation of smartness. At the end of the day, it's hard for us to even think about what smartness entails or what it can be. In this video, I'll talk to you about different ways in which we can understand smartness, and hopefully that'll help to extend your perspective about what is and what is not smart. So let's go. To begin our discussion of smartness, let's begin by talking about a classic perspective on smartness, which most of us are aware of, and that is book smartness. A smart person, by this operational definition, would be someone who reads a ton and knows a ton just from having investigated deeply into the human condition and thought about a lot of different things. If a person reads many different books, then they'll gain lots of different types of knowledge, whether you're talking about marketing, operations, biology, society, anything else of that nature. That is a distinct kind of smartness in itself because it does involve a person being able to talk about a wide variety of different topics and also to converse and consider different types of ideas. Now, just because you read a ton, it doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to criticize things or that what you read is going to be true. So that leads me to tip number 2. If you want to be smart, learn how to think critically. Critical thinking is an integral part of the experience of being smart. Being able to filter out what doesn't matter and care more about what does. Being able to distinguish those things is super crucial for the purpose of deciding what you should actually take in rather than what you should not. Because at the end of the day, the kind of information diet that we put ourselves through is tremendously important, and it's not just about dedicating time towards reading, but also knowing and making the executive judgment about what is right to listen to. Critical thinking is also important when it comes to situations that we don't necessarily read about. The third paradigm I'd like to present to you about smartness is that smartness is about being able to adapt to challenges as they present themselves. That can be challenges in an academic sense. It can also be a challenge in a social sense, in terms of how do I deal with a difficult colleague or with a difficult friend. That kind of adaptability is also important in many different situations where a person just needs to be able to learn on the go and deal with challenges as they present themselves in what can often be a dynamic and fast-moving environment. How do you prioritize? How do you make decisions on what is right to do at a particular point in time? Because we might have to make decisions in a condition of uncertainty, and oftentimes in very short time scales. Sometimes there may not be a right decision, but smartness in many ways relates to the ability to evaluate all the possible ex ante possibilities and what would probably be the right course in the days going ahead. The fourth paradigm of smartness that I'd like to present to you is that smartness is about empathy. There is a quote that goes, "Before you judge a man, walk a mile in his shoes." If a person can, in fact, step away from themselves and be able to relate to another person's situation or their circumstances, that showcases that they've done, to a great degree, enough reflection that they are able to imagine or visualize what another person must be thinking, feeling, seeing. And that requires, in many ways, a sense of what we call emotional intelligence, the ability to relate to how other people feel and to understand what they may feel, which in turn is one of the other factors that we might consider as part of smartness. With that in mind, another perspective, smartness is about self-awareness. The philosophers of old said that in order to change the world, you must first begin by changing yourself. The very act of reading, thinking, evaluating, and empathizing itself requires a degree of self-awareness. If a person doesn't even know their own attributes, what they're good at, what they are thinking about in the very first place, then it's hard to imagine that they could speak on behalf of other people. At the end of the day, a person can't give what they do not have. And one cannot have anything within one's mind unless one actually takes stock once in a while of the experiences that they've had, the situations that they faced, whether social, professional. Without self-reflection, the bulk of our experiences, at the end of the day, just settled together into a single amorphous mass from which we may not be able to get any value. That is unacceptable because we need somehow to transform our experiences and their nature into something that is better than what we receive in the very first place. Kind of similar to how plants take carbon dioxide and sunlight and transform it into oxygen. Yeah, something like that. The last point I'd like to make about smartness is that smartness, at the end of the day, is about being able to find value. And that kind of value, it can manifest in a whole bunch of different ways, whether it's in terms of benefiting the person themselves, guiding them to make the decision as to whether or not to pursue a particular career, or to learn something, to investigate something, or to start a certain project. Or it relates to being able to solve a societal problem at large, whether it's curing cancer, or advocating for justice and fairness, or equity in education, or, for example, creating policies, frameworks, and just things that make sense for the furtherance of the lives of people who lie beyond us on a day-to-day basis. Learning how to find value is something that does require a little bit more thinking because it requires a person not just to be able to use their brains, but also to learn how to develop the emotional intelligence and to be able to collaborate with people, work on projects that are grander than the person themselves can imagine. Alright, so far we talked about smartness from a number of different perspectives. We've talked about being smart as knowing a lot, book smartness. We've talked in turn about how smartness is only defined when you learn the ability to think critically about the things that make up life. And from there we talked about how smartness relates to adaptation and also to empathy, to understand the challenges of the people around us, which in turn requires self-awareness. We talked also about how from self-awareness, we need to learn how to create value, not just for ourselves, but also the world around us. But at the end of the day, bridging every single one of these, and probably more important than all of them combined, is that in order for a person to be smart, I believe that he or she needs to have humility. The entire experience of the world is so vast and grand that no single individual can, in the span of a single human life, understand it all, take it all in. In every single state of the world, our knowledge is always incomplete, and there will always be people who know certain things or who are better at certain things than us. And I think that it takes a truly smart person to know that although you could think of the picture of human knowledge as one of lack, the reality is that it is more of a grand tapestry that is only made complete when we collaborate together with one another and chart the next phase of our era by collaborating together, by combining together the individual puzzle pieces that make up our careers, lives, and different activities in order to create something that is greater than the sum of its parts. Alright, and that's my entire perspective on smartness. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed it, then make sure to hit like, get subscribed, and I will see you in the next video.